Welcome back to College Recruiter, where we believe that every student and recent grad deserves a great career. I'm Anna Peters. I am with Marky Stein, who is a career consultant who works with Fortune 500 companies, and she works with colleges and universities across the country and is a best-selling author of career planning books. So she is chock full of advice, and today she will be sharing more advice around negotiating salary and a benefit package. So students and grads, when you are at the point when you're receiving that job offer, or before you get to that point, heed Marky's advice. We are continuing our conversation, and Marky, I want to ask you a few more questions here. So in an entry-level job, we've talked already about, preparing for that job offer and what to expect out of a general package. At what point in that entry-level job can someone start to think about asking for a pay raise?
There are several ways to ask for a pay raise and several ways to gauge when it's time for a pay raise. One is competency-based. When you first join a company, you're doing something called ramping up. They don't even expect you to necessarily hit the ground running. You might worry that they expect you to rise to that on the very first day. But in fact, companies prepare for what's called ramp-up time. The ramp-up time could be anywhere from 3 days to 3 months to a year. And that's a time during which you're being trained or you're being introduced to the policies and procedures of a company. And I believe that you can consider yourself competent when you know how to do almost all of the responsibilities of your job without supervision. Mm-hmm. That's the time when you can realistically ask for a salary. Then when you become proficient and you could actually teach someone else your job, that might be another time when you asked for a competency-based increase. Mm-hmm. Now, it could also be time-based. And Anna, I really don't recommend asking for a raise sooner than 6 months. That would probably be not a successful request. But some companies give an automatic raise every year, and that's something you can ask about in your interview. What are the chances for promotions or regular raises? And finally, if you can measure your success, like a salesperson who meets a quota or exceeds a quota, or even a customer service person, you can say, I deal with over 250 customers a day, or I am over 38% more than my sales quota, or I brought over 200 customers into my company today. So if you can quantify your accomplishments, that's another way to go to the employer and say, hey, this is a quantification of how I'm saving you time, making you money, getting more customers for you.
Yeah, that's good advice to be able to make your case. Even if it's tough in your position to quantify, if you're not in sales, for example, to prepare for that conversation with your case. Demonstrate what you've done, right? Demonstrate how you have met or exceeded expectations.
Exactly.
Good. Let's talk a little bit about the gender gap, the pay gap. So what advice do you have for young women who, unfortunately, realistically should expect to face being underpaid, or at least not paid as much as their male counterparts, if we don't want to use maybe underpaid? So what kind of tips do we have for those young women?
Well, statistics are showing that women are still paid about 79 cents to $1 compared to men. And really, I have the same advice for a woman as I would for a man to get pay equity for that first paycheck. Sometimes women don't want to enter into the salary negotiation. So first you have to be willing to enter into that negotiation, to say something like, I'd be more inclined to take the offer if it were slightly more, or I was looking more at the mid to high range of salary, something like that. Or what kind of benefit package do you offer? You have to ask the question, you have to bring it up. But once you bring it up, Anna, it's a matter of really bringing out some statements about accomplishments. And you might not think you have any if you've never had a job before, but take a look at what you've been doing in college. You could say, I planned an event for my sorority that had a budget of $2,000, and I negotiated with the caterer and got $400 off, thereby saving my sorority $400. That's the kind of negotiating skills I'd like to bring to your company. Now that's really making a case for yourself.
That's great.
Let's take something technical, like when I took my computer engineering class for my bachelor's in computer sciences, I organized a local area network, that's a technical term, but where my whole family could log into the same network at home. So you do have achievements. Quantifying them is great, or just specifying exactly what you've done at school, like even like given a PowerPoint slide in my anthropology class and received a standing ovation. Really look at each of your classes, what you did in those classes, what projects you did, what you learned, and be able to bring up a reason, a rationale, whether you're a man or a woman, for a higher salary.
And to look at, and you mentioned this the last time we had this, or we talked, to prepare by doing your research, whether it's on Glassdoor or on College Recruiter, finding a salary calculator that that shows you where the median would be for that position with your experience and your location.
Exactly.
Can you share, so speaking on the same topic, we're seeing it's kind of a hot topic, right? So the pay gap is very stubborn. Some of these laws that are popping up, what very briefly, what should candidates know about some of these new employment laws?
Actually, there's some great news happening in gender equity and employment. Massachusetts passed a bill recently that an employer doesn't get to bring up your last salary. And if your salary was somewhat lower as a woman, for whatever reason, they might believe that they can pay you a little bit more and that would be okay. But that can compound itself if you were making a lower salary year after year after year, so that you're always making a lower salary.
Can't catch up.
You can't catch up. So luckily, Massachusetts has passed a law that employers can't ask about your salary in your job history. California followed suit, and now there is a bill before Congress that will become a federal law that it's not okay for employers to ask about a salary history. And I think that law is going to make the gender equity much more fair for women.
Yeah, I hope so too. Employers will probably struggle with it for a while, but once we all get used to it, I think it's a good thing. The takeaway for candidates is to be aware if an interviewer or at any point during the interview process, somebody asks you about your salary, you may be in a location where that's not legal. So you should be aware of what your state or your city's law is. I think New York City too has passed one.
Oh, that's great.
And I would just add that negotiating salary at the point of job offer is the best point of leverage you'll ever have. You know, once you take the job, once you say yes, you're never going to have as much to bargain with because you're in. So
Right.
Take advantage of that moment, right?
And sometimes at the initial interview, which is very often a phone interview, they will try to get you to agree to a certain salary. One of my students, they tried to get her to agree to a $35 an hour salary when her research showed her that the median was about $50 an hour. What happened, Anna, is that I advised her to say not no to the $35 because then she would have never gotten into the next interview. They would have cut her off right there. Not to say yes, because then she'd be stuck at a salary that she would eventually resent. But once she got past that interview by saying, I would consider that, I would consider $35 an hour, or we could discuss that. She actually ended up, after proving herself in the next interview, being able to negotiate for a $50 an hour salary.
Good for her.
So
She's got a good coach.
Right.
Good story. Well, I think that that will wrap up our second conversation here. So for students and grads, if you haven't checked out our first conversation with Marky, definitely check that one out too. And I'm sure that we will check in again very soon about another topic. Thank you so much for joining us today, Marky, and best of luck with your new book. Do you want to give us the title one more time?
Sure. My new book is called From Freshman to Fortune 500, 7 Secrets to Success for Grads, Undergrads, and Career Changers.
Great. Well, best of luck, and we will speak again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.